Now, welcome back on the program. Now, artificial intelligence is opening new doors in global education. In Africa, is beginning to explore, as Africa begins to explore its potentials. Now, from AI-powered learning apps to virtual tutors, technology is helping bridge the gap in classrooms, and teachers and resources are beginning to get scared. Now, but while the promise is great, the challenges are real. For internet access, lack of digital infrastructure and limited funds continue to slow progress. Now, many schools are yet to adopt basic digital tools, making advanced technologies like AI feel out to reach. Now, some experts now say for Africa to benefit fully, there must be more investment in training of teachers, local content development, and affordable tech access, especially in rural areas. Now, joining us for this conversation is strategic development expert Ugochi Agoreyo. Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning.
Now, tell us, how important is AI in developing education in Nigeria and beyond?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about education. And I think the first thing is, obviously, I think the broad theme here is the potential that we see for AI to accelerate learning in Africa. We've always talked about, how we don't see quality. We're not able to find, quality education in Africa, except you go outside of Africa. But AI is giving us the potential now to be able to accelerate and improve the quality of education that we find in Africa. What that means is basically where we have always talked about, quality of teaching, the amount of books that are not able to come into Africa. AI is able to gather all of that information and put it at your fingertips. So I think the first thing there is the huge potential for us to be able to access the type of education that we normally wouldn't find unless we go outside of Africa. That's the first thing that AI is able to bring to us. And I think that's a really important thing. So that's really, really important for us to understand the potential that we see there for AI to drastically improve the quality of education. And I think the second thing that is really important for us to understand as well is the ability for AI to personalize and adapt our learning. This one is really important because I think one of the things that we've always talked about in Africa is how learning is not differentiated, because not everyone learns the same way. If you are in Africa and if you have a child that doesn't learn typically, so we say that the child is neurotypical. If that child is not neurotypical, which is the majority of people that you have, if the child is neurodivergent, which means that they learn in a different way, or maybe you have a slow learner, or you have a child that has learning difficulties, there's so much potential here for AI to help bridge the gap where we would have needed to import the experts, understand how we then teach those children. Because if you think about AI tutors, you are able to say to an AI tutor like Gemini or ChatGPT, break this down into more understandable bits. How do we take this from here to here? Can you repeat that? Can you do that again? Can you give me a quiz? So that helps a learner or a child that is not able to understand in the first instance in a classroom. It helps the child now understand better. So there is huge potential there.
I like how you spoke about classrooms, and I want to ask that, let's imagine classrooms in rural areas, for example, in Africa and in Nigeria, full of students that don't really have access to a lot of educational resources. How does or what does AI integration look in that kind of setting?
So here we have to marry the two. So we have the opportunity for AI, and we already have AI existing, right? But then we also have the challenge that has been perennial across Africa, which is infrastructure. how do we improve infrastructure? So we have to marry the two. We have to talk about infrastructure development. How do we get those devices that are able to give those people in rural areas access to this AI technology? So working with government, working with private sector, I think is really important. So across telcos, across big tech organizations and the government, to put these devices that will be able to access AI in their hands. Once we have that, and we've been able to do it with things like USSD, text devices only, those entry-level type devices. We've been able to do that, across telecoms when we started to talk about getting internet to the rural areas. So this is something that we need to work on if we want to take advantage of what AI has to bring, but it can be done. We've done it with entry-level phones for rural areas. We should be able to then do that, incorporate AI into that. So once we marry the two, it's something that we'll be able to scale across the continent.
Very interesting there. So how can the teachers be trained to ensure they use this artificial intelligence to improve education in Nigeria and across Africa? And can this also help slow learners to improve?
Yes. So I'll give some examples. I think when we talk about access to quality education, it's not just for the learners, it's also for the teachers. If you look at the Western world now, when they are talking about AI, the teachers are involved in that upskilling, in the sharing of expertise, right? The teachers understand what AI is and how you use AI. So in Africa, that's something that we need to start doing, where every conversation that you have today, most of the teachers don't understand AI, don't understand how to use it, talk less of how to use it responsibly. So we have to start thinking about how do we train the teachers? And this is where we need that public-private partnership between the governments on the continent and big tech companies like Microsoft or Google. These tech companies are then able to say, okay, can we support in training the teachers? And then the teachers understand what the value is for each student. I'll give an example of technology that how you can scale the technology to help learners that are maybe slow learners or neurodivergent learners. So for instance, we have AI tutors. We have AI tutors like Gemini and ChatGPT, right? These tutors help you to find answers, but we want people to actually learn, not just find answers. AndLl come to that, because when you talk about the challenges,
thank you so much for that answer. But in conclusion, just in summary, if you were put in charge of, let's say, organizing a 10-year roadmap for the integration of AI into education in Nigeria, what would be the 3 most important things that you would do? Or let's just call them pillars.
I think the first thing is look at policy, right? Because you want AI to come into schools, but you also want it to come into schools responsibly. People are worried about the ability for AI to help children cheat, right? So we have to talk about policy. We have to develop those policies and those regulations. So that's the first thing. Make sure that there are guardrails before you introduce AI. The second thing is expertise. How do you get the expertise? Make sure that the teacher training curriculum is adjusted so that there's AI training in the teacher training curriculum. Then the third thing would be the curriculum for the students, as well as access. How do they access AI? So what sort of devices and how do you get those devices into the hands of the people that need to learn? So I think those would be the 3 most important things to get
Absolutely.
AI if we're looking at a 10-year plan.
It's a fine place to leave it. Ugochi Agureyo, strategy development expert. Many thanks for joining us on the program this morning.